Hey, travel nurses. There is so much confusion about tax homes in the traveling nurse community. So today, let's clear it up once and for all. What the hell is a tax home? All right, so we know that the bulk of a traveler's compensation package includes their taxable base rate, the tax-free stipend, relocation bonus slash reimbursement of mileage from your home to the facility. And we also know that the spice of life is in that tax-free stipend. I mean, after all, that's how a staff nurse can go from clipping coupons to survive to wiping the tears of their haters with crisp Benjamins and flying off into the sunset dripping in Louis Vuitton, right? So we're all about that tax-free stipend. Now, there are a couple factors that govern that stipend remaining tax-free. You've got to establish a tax home and you've got to be able to duplicate your expenses. So what is a tax home anyway? Well, the IRS code defines a tax home as the geographic location where a worker earns the bulk of their income. The caveat about this is it may or may not also be where you own a home or where you rent. This is where a lot of the confusion comes in. A lot of travel nurses will tell each other that, oh, a tax home is where you live. It actually has nothing to do with where you live. It has to do with the location of where you earn your income. So where your job lives. A great example will be for people that live in the Northeast. There are a lot of people that work, for example, in Connecticut, but they may work on Wall Street. So they take the train to New York every single day. Their tax home is not Connecticut. It's that geographic area where they work in New York, and that's where they're getting taxed from. Now, there's something to be said about the IRS and the IRS code. The IRS code does things that they call tests. There's usually not ever one criteria to qualify for something. There are typically 3 or more. So the qualifying criteria to establish a tax home, there's actually 3 parts of it. Here they are. 1, you can perform your work business in the area that also happens to be the area of your main home as long as you're using that area to perform that work business. Or you have living expenses at your main home, which you are forced to duplicate because of the nature of your business that takes you far away from your main place of lodging. Or 3, you have other members of your family like your spouse or children or people that depend on you that still use your main home for lodging, and you do as well quite often. Or 4, a combination of all 3. Another thing that you can do to maintain your tax home is to have a PRN job where between contracts, you always go back and you work a few hours in your tax home to make sure that you maintain that status. These rules apply to more than travel nurses. They apply to workers who work places that aren't necessarily close to where they lay their head at night. So the important thing to understand is what part of these qualifications that a travel nurse like yourself can qualify for. The number one thing is duplicating expenses. The duplication of expenses is what determines whether your stipend will be tax-free or taxed. A couple things to remember with this. It's not enough to have a friend in another place where you're actually working on contract and they say, hey, you could stay at my house, I'll only charge you $30. You have to make sure the lodging expenses that you're duplicating are comparable to the lodging expenses that you would have incurred if you weren't at a buddy's house. An easy way to do that is just to hop on Zillow, hop on Craigslist, hop on whatever site that shows the rents in the area and figure out how much does a 1-bedroom cost in this area. Now, it doesn't have to be exact to something you saw there. Obviously, all areas have ranges from the lower end to the higher end, but as long as it's within that range, the IRS says that's okay. The important thing to understand is that the tax-free stipend isn't just free money that the company is giving you. It's money that's allowed to be given to you tax-free because the IRS understands that while you're away from home, you still have to live somewhere. And so what they're trying not to do is make sure that you don't go under double taxation. And that's what the use of the tax-free stipend is. That's not to say that you can't find good housing deals that are within that range and still be able to pocket a good amount of that stipend. But do it the right way and make sure that you are ticking off all the boxes to duplicate your expenses and retain that tax-free stipend status. No matter how you establish qualification for your tax home, the important thing to note is that you have a paper trail, whether it's a bank check that's cut from your account to the person you're paying rent, whether it's a contract that states that you're leasing a place for a certain area. Make sure that you have the documentation in place so you can ascertain, no matter if you get audited or not, that yes, I have been duplicating my expenses and the tax-free stipend that I've been receiving is 100% legitimate. If you have any other questions about establishing a tax home or ensuring tax compliance while traveling as a nurse, feel free to reach out at travelnursewealth.com and we'll be happy to help. My name is Marlon with West Financial, and I'm the Travel Nurse Financial Advisor.